Hello, good afternoon. My name is Doug Reside, and I'm the curator of the theater division here at New York Public Library for the Performing Arts. And I'm really excited to welcome you all here for one of the really important and special events that we do here just about every year. Arnold Mittelman and I both share a belief that theater is one of the best ways to remember, and this is a day of remembrance, and a day that we hope to look at the way in which some of the really important dramas and plays and even musicals that have opened this year help us to remember and mark this very solemn occasion. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking here because Arnold's going to introduce everyone, so I think I'll leave it at that and say that I'm very pleased to introduce my friend Arnold Mittelman, who is the artistic director and also the president and producing artistic director of the National Jewish Theater Foundation. He's also the founding director of the Holocaust Theater International Initiative at the University of Miami Miller Center for Contemporary Judaic Studies. So without further ado, please welcome Arnold Mittelman.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody. Is this level okay? Good. Yes, this is a very important day. It's a day that has been set aside by the United Nations to represent remembrance of the Holocaust. It's actually in honor of the liberation of Auschwitz, but it's also part of a larger pattern of remembrance that has consumed my life for the last 12 or 15 years when I was asked, having founded the National Jewish Theater Foundation, to see if there was a way I could focus its work on the ways theater has interpreted, understood, and helped us in remembering the Holocaust, its causes, its lessons, its contemporary issues that haunt us to this day. When Doug and I were discussing what we were going to do today, he actually brought up the notion of productions that were going on along with cell phones. So I told him I didn't want cell phones, but I'd be glad to salute the productions. It is an amazing circumstance, I think, and we all know in our business, which we will talk about later, how the confluence of certain things that allow a production to materialize, mature, and get produced can often be circumstantial rather than the direct cause and effect of everything you wanted. But if you think back, and I know a lot of you are here because of your connection to theater or Holocaust remembrance or Jewish identity, this has been a remarkable 18 months in New York. It started, I guess, with Leopoldstadt, which was then followed by Parade, Anne Frank the musical, King of the Jews, Remember This, about the life of Jan Karski, starring David Strathairn, the ongoing work of United Theater Company with their Cabaret in Captivity, Amid Falling Walls, done at the Yiddish Theater and at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. Now also a new musical has just opened about Sophie Scholl called the White Rose Musical. All of these are very important stories derived from either families or history, source material that great artists draw upon to create the wonder of theater. And so we are going to celebrate that today and try to understand the role it plays and how we must find a way to sustain that role. When we first started the Holocaust Theater International Initiative, the first act we ever did was to create an advisory board and meet and say what would be the single most important thing we could do initially. And the message was unanimous. We needed to somehow bring together every play that we could find that has been written from 1933 or even before through the present as an ongoing living catalog. We started with virtually no plays, and we have now discovered in multiple languages almost 1,000 works of art that have been created. They live online, and people have been able to learn about plays that way. And we have created a program called Remembrance Readings, which we've done on this very stage. And it's being done right now all over the country in universities, right now, as we speak. Universities, theaters, Jewish centers, churches, elementary schools, high schools have gone to the catalog, picked a play, and are reading it for small and large audiences, from the most elaborate professional level productions to just people sitting in a room wanting to share the power of theater with each other and discuss the play. That gives me such hope that what we love and care for in the theater can never or will never die, because there are people who are determined to make sure that it exists. I don't know, Susan, are you here? Susan Myers? Part of the ability to do that has been through strategic partners. Teresa Eyring and TCG have been great partners with us. People in England at the Holocaust Education Trust, and last but certainly not least, the Association of Holocaust Organizations, which represents virtually every museum and memorial in this country and Canada. And their president, Susan Myers, is here, and I'd like to acknowledge her personally and thank her. When you go to the site, you see a series of videos that help, I believe, from different points of view, make you understand the importance, or help you try to understand the importance and power of theater. I would like to show those videos first, and then I will introduce and bring on the panelists for our conversation on this subject. But first, I'd like to introduce a video, a very short, all of these are quite short, that was done by us with Michael Birnbaum. And you can show that now. Thank you.
Is there a role for the right type of theater and play? Look, theater transformed our understanding of the Holocaust. The single most impactful play of the 1950s with regard to the Holocaust was The Diary of Anne Frank. Diary of Anne Frank had a massive impact. And not only that, but it's an ongoing, continuing impact. I traveled about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, with Miep Gies, who was the woman who rescued who didn't rescue Anne Frank, the woman who provided for the needs of Anne Frank. And we traveled all over the country, and what was remarkable is how many women from the age of 15 to 70 came up to Miep Gies, hugged her, presumed that they knew her, because they had played her. and they had been her. The commandant of Treblinka was asked by Gita Sereni, why did you dehumanize these people if you're going to kill them anyhow? And he blurted out a very truthful answer, it made it easier to kill them if we didn't regard them as fellow human beings. What's the goal of theater? The goal of theater is to rehumanize these people, to give them a name, a voice, a narrative, a story. If the goal of the Nazis was to dehumanize, the possibility, the potential of theater is to rehumanize. So it's the counter-testimony, the counterweight.
That statement, thought they knew her because they had played her, has stuck in my mind forever. Because I understand, as someone who started out as an actor, what kind of identity and understanding was part of my life's growth from having played roles. And we've developed at the foundation and at the initiative ways to use testimony, survivor testimony, so that it can be actually done in classrooms and turned into opportunities theatrically for young people all over the world to be able to enact those testimonies and tell the stories not only to the audience, but to deepen their understanding themselves. This year, I lost a great friend, a gentleman named Irving Roth. I'd like to have Irving, of blessed memory, share his insights with you.
I was liberated. I went back, found my parents. My brother never returned. But he was always there somehow, not physically in my world, but certainly emotionally. Often I thought of him praying, saying psalms, playing the violin. Over the years, he did not disappear from my head. And so in 2004, I read a book called Bundy's Brother. I am Bundy's brother. About 2 months ago, there was a play put on by a school based on my memoir. And the school decided to invite me to see the play. It was a very emotional moment because I saw myself, I saw my brother, I saw my grandfather on the stage as we were. After the play, they asked me to say a few words. I usually am not at a loss for words, but that night, it's most difficult to speak. My throat closed up. But somehow I managed, through the tears, to speak about my brother again. Because that night, that March evening in 2012, my brother was alive in that auditorium. And that's really what's important. Because the objective of the Nazi regime was totally and completely eliminate the Jews as if they never existed. And yet, 67 years later, there was a conversation. Young people talking about my brother.
A while back, Irving Roth served as a consultant to a play that we produced and I was fortunate enough to direct called The Soap Myth, the central character of which was a young journalist who gets caught between the needs of a survivor to have his story told the way he wants it, Milton Saltzman, and the historians who love and honor that survivor but are forced to only and compelled to only tell the truth in factual information they can defend. A young actress played the lead in that, and she had certain comments to make about what it was like to go through that experience.
You open the paper and you see, 6 million people died. Oh, that you think that's very sad. That's awful. That's really terrible. But it's too big. You can't wrap your head around it. That number it's so vast. It's so atrocious what happened. And each story in it really is more heartbreaking than the last. And I think that's what's so wonderful about theater and about being able to do that, is that you can't tell the story of the entire Holocaust all at once. You can't even try, but you can tell one story. And by being specific and telling this one person's story and introducing the audience to a real person that's living in front of them and going through this and fighting, all of a sudden they relate and they have an in, and it's not just a giant number anymore. It's someone they know. It's someone they've seen fight for something in front of them. And all of a sudden they care. We live in a time today where the survivors are all old. They're all old, and soon they will all be gone. This will be something my children will only read about in books or hear stories about secondhand. They'll never meet or shake the hand of a survivor the way I got to shake Irving Roth's hand. So it's important that people see this and relate to it and feel connected to it personally, especially young people. So nothing like that could ever happen again, so that we pay honor to our elders, to people who have experienced something that we couldn't even imagine.
So there may be survivors in this audience today. The people you are about to meet and hear from have devoted a great portion of their creative energies, especially in recent productions and productions yet to come, in honoring your stories and memories. This is an ongoing reality, and you may ask, well, theater, New York, a specific audience, why not? Well, you see that people read these plays all over the world. You see that plays that have been created by some of the people you're about to meet have been done all over the world and continue to be done and translated. So the possibility, or to quote Michael, the potential of theater is to become the counter-testimony and the counterweight. And is an expression we use a lot at the initiative, try to create an artistic moral compass for future generations. I'd like to now bring to the stage, and I'll be very brief with their bios, but I think it's worth reading them, since a lot of people here may or may not have a visual impairment. But I'd first like to have come to the stage Bruce Sussman. Bruce he received the 2022 Drama Desk Award for the Outstanding Book of a Musical entitled Harmony, which is now playing on Broadway, and which I saw with my wonderful wife, Susan Green, 2 nights ago. It's a very important musical. The journey of it, Bruce will talk about and describe the reasons and the motivations for being associated with that journey on such a personal level for so long. I hope will be part of what he shares with you. Bruce Sussman, please, if you can come up. Next, I'd like to bring to the stage a very gifted and amazing director. Igor Golyak is the director of our class, which is now being done at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. My wife and I saw that last night. I've had the privilege, actually, of seeing every one of the plays that I've mentioned today and the plays that are yet to be mentioned. Igor is an award-winning director and part of the Arlequin Players Theater Company based in Boston, but his work has been seen off-Broadway and including The Orchard, starring Mikhail Baryshnikov and Jessica Hecht. I think it's safe to say that as long as, and I'll put it this way, young Igor is working, a lot of what we're trying to do is in fine hands. Thank you, Igor. Next, I'd like to bring to the stage Amanda Gronich. Amanda is a founding member of the Tectonic Theater Company, one of the most important theater companies in New York, and by way of its creations, perhaps internationally. They have a remarkable commitment to new work, developing new work, and nurturing artists who care, and artists who matter, and artists who can actually do it. So Amanda is the co-author of a play that's about to open at the New York Theater Workshop in April, entitled Here There Are Blueberries. I was privileged to be at the opening night of it at the La Jolla Playhouse, again in the company of my wife and my son. This is a family event. And our two wonderful friends, Jeffrey and Vivian Ressler, who helped sponsor that night. Jeffrey, of blessed memory, was so proud that night, and he could only be prouder as you start to see the history of this play unfold. It's just been nominated for 7 Helen Hayes Awards in Washington, D.C. It is about to come to New York, and Amanda Gronich has poured her heart, soul, and talent into the writing of it. Amanda Gronich. Moises Kaufman. Oy, oy, oy. The challenge with this man is to not make him feel any more than he's entitled to feel, but what he's entitled to feel, he has earned through so much incredible work. His Broadway credits include Paradise Square, Harvey Fierstein's Torch Song, Bengal Tiger at the Baghdad Zoo with Robin Williams, The Heiress starring Jessica Chastain, 33 Variations with Jane Fonda, a small work of art that will live forever called I Am My Own Wife, for which he won every award known to man and women. It just goes on and on. He is the creating force of the Tectonic Theater Company, and he received the National Medal of Arts from a gentleman called President Barack Obama. He is the co-author of Here There Are Blueberries and its director, Moises Kaufman. So there is another member of our esteemed family who almost 2 years ago, in the middle of something called the COVID lockdown, we were doing these programs in association with the library remotely. And at that point, this wonderful person, Lynn Meadow, who for 50 years has been the producing artistic director, the artistic director of the Manhattan Theater Club, and basically its driving force, along with some of the most remarkable authors and directors one can imagine, and was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the National Jewish Theater Foundation. And as part of that conversation, and I've screened this clip that I'm about to show, thank God I'm not wearing the same shirt today that I was wearing in that interview. We had a conversation about a play that you, I think, will recognize because it's currently running now on Broadway. Can we please show the clip, and panel might enjoy listening.
I know at this moment in time, you have a play that has been selected and produced by you in New York that couldn't be more relevant. Would you be kind enough to share with us how you found the play, why it's important to you, and why it's so appropriate for the event we're remembering?
I would be happy to talk about Prayer for the French Republic, which actually was not a play that we found. It's a play that we commissioned. The Manhattan Theater Club went to a writer named John Harmon, who wrote a play called Bad Jews and a play called Significant Other, and has written these plays with Jewish themes. And we asked him to write a play without specifying what. We asked him to think about writing on a large canvas, and he did just that. He wrote about 5 generations of a French family who've been living in Paris, and the play takes place just after the war, and it also takes place in the present, with the family making a decision and confronting what is going on in Paris and in France in 2015, when there were many events, anti-Semitic events, and asking themselves the question, is it still safe for us here? And as we know, this is a question that Jews have been asking themselves probably time immemorial, from many countries, many situations, from Spain to Russia, Lithuania, Germany, obviously. And this play is written by a young writer, based very loosely on family that he's aware of in France. He spent time in France. And it's an incredible portrait of love and family and commitment and questions about religion and questions about safety and what it means to be a Jew in a society in which one believes that one has integrated. The family has a family business. They make pianos, and they're called the Salomon. And I think it's an extraordinary play with tremendous humor, tremendous warmth, and tremendous relevance. So we actually, reviews are beginning in January. They will have begun in January, and will be opening sometime at the end of the month. And I think this play, and the director, David Cromer, who put it together, is directing now and doing a wonderful job with an extraordinary cast of 12 people. He was the director of The Band's Visit, which you probably remember, a musical on Broadway, dealing also with Jewish themes. So I'm proud, very proud to be producing this play, and I think he's a great American playwright. And I think my heart goes out as a Jew to have the honor to be producing this play. And I feel like the stage is the greatest place that we can take a look at what our lives are about, ask questions. And this is a play that represents ideals that I have had for a long time, since I was a little girl in the basement of the synagogue where my mother took me, and for a show that she was doing, New Faces of, I don't even want to say when, 1842. And when she was doing a show in the basement, and for the Purim play. So this play for me goes back to my earliest beginnings of working in the theater, in the basement of Temple, Michigan, Israel, on Chapel Street in New Haven, Connecticut, where I fell in love with the stage. And my mom took me to this show, New Faces, and I watched a man who was doing an act. It was kind of a variety show. It was like that New Faces show. This man was doing an act, and part of the act was that he would fall forward as if he's falling off the stage. And my 4-year-old eyes just widened, and I thought, well, this is just the most exciting thing I've ever seen. And I guess I've had that feeling, Arnold, and you know, because I know you share it, of fascination and love and gratitude to work in the theater and to be able to explore some of the things that are very important to me. So this is a very long-winded answer to how honored I feel to be receiving this award, and how honored I feel that at this moment in time, we're doing a play that I think is very important for us to be looking at, for all of us to be looking at, given the situation in our own country and around the world. The questions that are being asked are very important questions, and we don't change history necessarily, but we look to help change consciousness in the theater, don't we? And that's been an honor and a privilege, and I think something that I felt was part of my responsibility of leading a theater, to do plays that had something that had fun and had laughter, but also plays that had meaning and things that made us look at our lives perhaps in a different way than we did when we walked in the door.
Well, you've certainly accomplished that goal, my friend.
This is the big choreographic move. I go to another chair and sit down. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. This has now been, oh, they're back. I'm going to ask each of the panelists if they wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about the reasons that, it's almost the same kind of question I asked Lynn. What drew you to the material, the story? What was the play that you were creating based on? And what has been its greatest enjoyments, challenges, and opportunities that you see for its future? And I'm including you all in this, but I'd like to start with Bruce, if you don't mind.
Could we have the house lights a little bit brighter so we can see our audiences?
Spoken as a true director.
Exactly. Do you understand that I am working with some of the biggest directors in the business here? Can you, house lights, come up a bit more for Mr. Kaufman? Thank you.
So what drew me to Harmony?
Yes.
I read a review in the New York Times, Sunday New York Times, in 1992, I believe it was, of a documentary that was running down at the Public Theater. They used to have a screening room down there. I don't think they do anymore, where they showed art films and documentaries. I'm a great fan of documentaries. And this, there was a photo, a very compelling photo of 6 young men, hair brilliantined, white tie and tails. And the headline was, I thought, odd. It said, Eberhard Fechner's epic documentary, Comedian Harmonist at the Public. Eberhard Fechner, who's he? Comedian Harmonist, what an odd pairing of words. And I read this glowing review of this German documentary, and I thought, gee, I think I need to see this. I went down and endured 3.5 hours of German documentary making with subtitles. Not my usual idea of a good time. And I was absolutely gobsmacked by, I should have been overwhelmed, a daunting array of characters, sweeping historical storytelling. And what occurred to me was, 2 things occurred to me. Number one, why don't I know about this? And I soon realized that why I didn't know about this was the story. And 2, it thematically occurred to me right then and there that this was a story about the quest for harmony in what turned out to be the most discordant chapter in human history. That's what drew me to the piece. And after a while, I just felt that I had a mission to tell this story. so that these people could be better remembered.
And we all want to thank you for dragging along that unknown composer, Barry Manilow, into the process. Can you tell us how you brought that idea to your partner in creativity?
When I left that screening room, I walked out onto Lafayette Street, and there used to be a payphone on the street. Remember payphones? And I called him. He lives in Palm Springs, and I live in Manhattan. I called him from the street, and I just blathered into the phone. We'd been wanting to write a musical. When we met back in 1843, we had gotten together to be musical theater writers. But then this thing called Mandy happened, and everything got screwed up. So we had been, all those years, been wanting to write a musical, and we had done animated film musicals and so on, and it just reminded us we wanted to write for the stage. So I told him, I said, I think I found the story we've been looking for. And I told him about this. And like me, he said, why don't we know who they are? And I said, Barry, that is the story. And he signed on right away.
Great. Igor, same kind of question. What drew you to this play? I mean, you select, your range is quite prolific in terms of ideas and works you pursue. So why this, and can you help us with the full and correct pronunciation of the author of the play's name?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So the play that I directed is called Our Class, and it is by a Polish playwright whose name is Tadeusz Slabadzianek. Yeah. What drew me to a play? I don't know if drew is, I guess drew is the right word, but I have a son whose name is Jacob, and I have a daughter whose name is Esther, and I guess they drew me to this play. The play is about 10 classmates starting in the 1920s. 5 of them are Catholics, five of them are Jews, and they turn on each other. The Soviets come, the Germans come, and the different occupations back and forth. They turn on each other, and there's a big pogrom in 1941 where the Catholics burn a barn full of Jews, of their neighbors, 1,600 people. The half of the town that was Jewish was burned in that barn, and a couple of people survived. What drew me is the thought that raising my children in this country, that there is a feeling that the evil that existed in this world is over the ocean. It's far away, and it existed in some mystical Nazis that were really bad. And thank God it's over. And now we can, continue our safe lives here in this beautiful country. And I think that's false. I think that evil lives in the mundane, and I think that the idea, today's a Remembrance Day, and I was just sitting and thinking, what does it mean to remember? And is it, like, if I tell or how do I tell my daughter or my son or friends, we need to remember? Like, if we need to remember something, there's no remembering because it doesn't spark anything. It's not a need, really. It's very theoretical, right? Or we experience some stories and they have an emotional effect on us, and then we walk out on Lafayette Street and go about our day and go to Starbucks and so forth. But it doesn't affect us. And I think, for me, this play is not about what has happened. but about what is going to happen. That this will happen to us again. And the remembering is important in that sense that we remember what has happened because it's going to happen again. I'm absolutely sure of that. Being from Ukraine, originally with, reading the news on the two wars simultaneously, just one last thing I want to say. In Poland, I went to a trip, we went with our team to a trip to Poland to research this project and research this town and so forth. And just an interesting piece of history is that in the 13th century, King Casimir invited all the Jews that were basically thrown away from other countries because he wanted to improve economy, he gave all sorts of rights to the Jews that didn't have them in other countries. And for Jews, for 700 years, it was the capital of Jewish life, Lublin, the university, the safety, the acceptance of the Jewish people for 700 years. And in the 20th century, it is the biggest, most of the concentration camps, out of 3,300,000 Jews that lived, 3 million were killed. The safest place on earth for Jews. How long have we been here in America? It was a rhetorical question.
So, prayer for the French Republic based on family history. Harmony based on actual men who existed, internationally renowned performers that nobody knew. This, to be clear, including the burning of the barn with 1,500 Jews, which was ignited by their neighbors, is factually true as an event that took place.
Absolutely. July 10th, 1941, the town of Jedwabne, which had 3,200 people total living, 1,600 of which were Jews, were burned by their neighbors. And this is a truth that just recently had come out in the early 2000s. Neighbors that they grew up with. It's a light sleeper, anti-Semitism.
The source material for the next play that we're going to discuss, Here There Are Blueberries, and I know we'll understand why the title is what it is when Amanda and Moises get done speaking. Would you please share with us the source, the story, and the reason, and also, interestingly enough, your collaboration?
Well, Moises and I met in 1843. There you can see the theme here. No, I normally don't share this one detail about the genesis of this project, but in this house I'm going to. Moises will talk about how he came to the story and where he found it. But he spoke to me for the first time about this project at Sammy's Romanian Steakhouse. May it rest in peace, and may it come back to life, rise from the literal ashes. We all know of the food of the ashes. Yes, so I, in addition to working in documentary television for many, many years, I also put 10 long years in the trenches of documentary television. Did I say theater? Okay. I worked in documentary theater and television, and all of my colleagues have worked on something about the Holocaust, and I was really this sort of outlier in that I had never, ever, ever worked on anything even approaching the subject matter, and I was absolutely terrified about that. And I never could have imagined coming at it through television. But when Moises and I were talking about how do we do this, that I could come to this subject through theater made sense. One of the questions that we ask ourselves at Tectonic is, how can theater tell a story in a way that no other medium can? And what was so specifically fascinating to me as a writer, I'm a Jewish playwright, How was I going to come to this material from a personal standpoint, from an ethical standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, and how can theater tell story in a way that no other medium can? And how can we tell a story about an album of photographs? How can you make a play about an album of photographs? How do you invite the audience into the experience of quite literally going through the pages of these photographs? And what is the perspective that we suddenly see when we look through the literal lens of the perpetrators? I don't want to give anything away. This play is about an album of photographs that lands at the desk of a historian in training at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC. It is a mystery. It is a detective novel. It is about figuring out who is in these images, why was this album created, what did it mean. But no one in the world had ever seen these pictures before. And so suddenly there was this new way into a story that I think more has been written about the Holocaust than any other subject matter. And how do we tell this story in the 21st century in new ways? How do we look at the perpetrators? And what is the meaning of doing that when we are not seeking to exonerate or absolve or apologize for, but we are recognizing they are human beings who worked at a concentration camp and had days off from their labors. So it was just this absolutely extraordinary journey creatively, and we went to Europe and Poland and Germany, and we conducted interviews. I will leave much of this to Moises to describe, but asking an audience to enter into these pictures, one of which is captioned, "Here There Are Blueberries," is really just the most extraordinary theatrical journey of saying we are going to look and we are going to see the reality that they created, the quotidian life that they led at the Auschwitz concentration camp, which was so radically different beyond measure from the atrocities that they were committing while they were there. So it has been extraordinary, and I never cease to be amazed by this material.
Yeah, I think I started writing the play before even asking Amanda, because there was an article in the New York Times about an album of photographs that has just been donated to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. And what had happened was that this young historian archivist in the museum got a phone call. And the phone call was, "Hello, I would like to donate an album of photographs of Auschwitz to the museum." And this young historian, she knows that there are very few photographs of Auschwitz. There's the Lily Jacob album, but there are no photographs of Auschwitz because the Nazis didn't want anybody to know what was happening there. And so when she got this call, she assumed that the album of photographs was from another camp, because Auschwitz is the name that most people know. But she said, even if it's not Auschwitz, even if these are photographs of another camp, I still want to see them. So she asked this donor to send the photographs, and she got the box, and she opened it, and the photographs, the first person that she saw in one of the photographs was Joseph Mengele. And so she thought, oh my God, yes, these photographs are of Auschwitz. But the thing that struck her the most is that the photographs were not images of the victims. They were all images of the perpetrators. And they were not images of the perpetrators as they did things to the victims. It was the daily lives of the people who run the camp. And so you see somebody lighting a Christmas tree. You see an officer lighting a Christmas tree. You see somebody else playing with their pet. You see somebody else playing with their children. So all of these things, and what's interesting is that if you see these photographs, other than the Nazi insignia, this could be anybody, right? We all play with our children. We all play with the pets. Many of us light Christmas trees. But what's interesting is what's happening outside of the frame, right? Outside of the frame, at the time these photographs were taken, was the Hungarian Project, which is when the Nazis killed around 330,000 Hungarian Jews. So I became fascinated with this idea of these images. I went to the Holocaust Museum and I interviewed this historian. And what struck me is that I knew that I wanted to write a play about this, but I didn't know how. How do you write a play about an album of photographs? And when I interviewed this historian, she said, well, I saw this picture and I recognized Mengele, but I wasn't sure who the person next to him was. So then I started doing research and I went to other part of the museum and I asked somebody else, and it turns out that that person was the head of Auschwitz. And then, so basically what happens is that she's going through detective work to try and figure out who was everybody in the photographs. And it turns out that the album belonged to the assistant to the head of Auschwitz. So it was somebody who was right at the heart of everything that was happening. And as Amanda said, what is the Holocaust has been the single historical event that has been most written about in the history of humanity. So what else is there to say that is new? And when I saw the photographs, I said, this is new. These photographs have not been seen. And I think, as Igor said, it's in the mundane that we recognize that we are like them, right? That there's always the distance of, well, the Nazis were these monsters. And of course, the moment we say they're monsters, we separate ourselves from them. And I think what you see in these photographs is that their daily lives looks remarkably like our daily lives. And so all of the play tries to create, to eliminate any distance that we can say we're not like that, right? Because the fact is that we all have the possibility of doing that. And the thing that she kept finding over and over and over again, the historian, was that, yes, there were some people who were culpable, right? But the owner of this album, he wasn't Mengele. Mengele said, okay, you go to the gas chamber, you go to work. So he did, in fact, kill people. But Hawker, who's the owner of the album, he was a administrator. He didn't actually literally send people to the chamber. He organized the whole thing. But then there's also pictures of the secretaries. And the secretaries are these young girls. They're all, and they didn't kill anybody. All they did was they worked in an office and they sent a telex to Berlin saying how many people had died and how many people had sent to the... So what is the difference between culpability, complicity, and complacency? And I would venture to say that we all fall somewhere in that continuum. So that's what the play is about. And, when Amanda and I decided to work together on it, what was really, really, really amazing was, well, both of us had this incredible curiosity, but then we went to Auschwitz, and we interviewed the people in Auschwitz. We looked at the photographs, and we could find where the photographs were taken in the camp. And then we found, and we interviewed descendants. There's only one person in the photographs who was a kid in the photograph, and he's alive now, and we interviewed him. But mostly we interviewed the descendants of the people who were in the photographs, and we showed the grandson of one of the people in the photographs. This is your grandfather, isn't it? And he had to deal with, yes, that is my grandfather. And how do you deal with the sense of inheritance?
Have any of you seen any of the plays that are currently being discussed?
Theater goers, thank you. Keep showing up.
For those of you who haven't, you have until February 4th to see Harmony. You have till February 11th to see our class at Bell. And for any number of weeks starting in April.
April 13th previews and May
17th.
7th is the opening.
Here There Are Blueberries will be at the New York Theater Workshop downtown. And prayer, I got to plug Lynn. Prayer for the French Republic is actually running right next door
to us, yeah.
Your theater. I'm going to go back to you, Bruce, and do one more cycle. And we do want to leave time at the end of this for a conversation and questions anybody might have. So if somebody from the library can kind of give me, a 10 or 15-minute notice so we can have questions, I'd appreciate that. Bruce, this journey has been through so many iterations, possibilities, changes, productions, revisions, and all that. But you stayed with it. You were determined, available, constantly open to creating it, all the while other remarkable things were going on in your lives and Barry's with his work and your work together. I mean, so two questions, I guess, in one. What drove you to do that? And what has that process, what is the impact it's had on you?
I used to be a brunette.
They didn't hear it. They didn't hear it.
I used to be a brunette. First of all, not to get too much into the weeds, but when people say, gee, the journey was so long, why? Number one was because we didn't give up on it. It would have been a lot shorter had we decided to abandon it. There's a gauntlet that an original musical must go through in order to make it to Broadway. And at every step in that gauntlet, there's a possible death sentence. You can do a reading, and that's the end. You'll just never hear about it again. Or you survive the reading and you do a workshop, and nope, it's not going to work. And then you survive that, and then you do out of town, and the reviews are bad, and it dies. Well, we survived all of that several times. And the stickler always was getting it into New York. And we signed with commercial producers 4 times. What people don't realize, many people don't realize, is that when you do, as long as that producer pays you a modest option payment, he or she or they can hold on to the piece for as long as 3 years. Well, we did that 4 times. That's 12 years right there. So now why did we keep going? Well, number one, I just had this tenacious desire to do something to serve the memory of these 6 characters with whom I had fallen in love. I just love these guys, and I love the women they fell in love with. And I thought it was just so remarkable to me that they sold millions of records and performed in the greatest concert halls in the world, and shared the same bill with Marlene Dietrich and Josephine Baker and Victor Borge, and made 13 movies. And nobody knows who they are. How's that possible? Well, because there was a conscious effort to destroy their memory. And I, silly Jew that I am, thought that I could do something to fix that. And that's why I held on to it.
I have a sense from just meeting you for the first time and hearing you talk that you don't regret a moment of it.
I don't. I mean, I wish there were some pretty painful twists and turns. We almost made it to Broadway once before, and in the 7th week of rehearsal, I don't know if you know this, Moises, a 7th week of rehearsal, the general manager came in and shut us down to inform us the producer had failed to raise the capitalization of the show. 7 weeks. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can somebody boost
These
his
mics are
boost his
low.
mic?
We almost made it to Broadway once before, and in the 7th week of rehearsal, the producer's general manager came in and shut us down and told us that he had failed to raise the money to we were leaving the next day to go to Philadelphia for our tryout in Philadelphia. So, I mean, that literally sent Barry to the hospital. And I remember walking home from that announcement and nearly got run over by a bus because I was in such a blather. I just walked into the street and a bus came whizzing by and brushed me back. So I regret that. I regret that there were so many painful episodes, but I don't regret my commitment to it. And I don't think this will be the last you hear of Harmony. I think something else will happen to it along the way.
It deserves to.
Thank you.
Igor, you just described somewhat a process that you go through. I saw the work you do and how you do it, and the imagination, and if people haven't seen it, this is not, I mean, Harmony is a musical with an important message told in a conventional yet unconventional manner. Our class is told in a very unconventional manner for people who think of a normal staging of a straight drama. Can you tell us why you feel and needed to do creatively what you've done with the piece so that it has so many varieties and places that it comes at the audience, including your use of video and other things of that kind? I know this is kind of awkward for people who've not seen the play to hear people talk about the play, but I'm hoping in the course of it that you will understand not only about the play, but about the people who make these plays and what is important to them and who they are and why they are so valuable.
Has anyone seen the play? Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Moises. You know, it's hard to say why I do the way I do. I think it's just the dialogue that the dialogue that I have, the internal dialogue that I have with the audience that come to see the show, is very specific, and it's the dialogue that I would have with friends of mine, and if that conversation is not interesting, I wouldn't have it. So the conversation that I want to build, the internal conversation that I want to build with the audience, is using those examples that I use in the production. So that's what's interesting to me. It's not just about the story itself. It's how it affects us and the layers of the effect of the story onto people my age and imaginary or real friends of mine that sit in the audience. Yeah.
When you direct a play of that kind, the way you do it, the actors are releasing. They are physically active and fulfilling the emotional reality of the play. You're there absorbing. What are the dreams you have? What are the thoughts you have when all of this is compressed in you and you're not allowed to release as a director?
I'm not sure I understand.
Maybe you don't want to.
You mean?
I'm saying, as a director, you are taking in everything and all the emotional reality of the play as it's unfolding.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the play. You've described one of the core incidences in the play, the murder of all these Jews as represented by your cast. It's horrific at times. Mm-hmm. You're seeing that, but you're not up there acting, emoting, freeing yourself emotionally. What goes on inside you as a director, and how do you handle, maybe that's the word I should use, how do you handle the experience of not having the opportunity to release your emotions the way the actors do?
Well, I sometimes there's different strategies that I use. So sometimes I don't go see the play, so just to protect myself. You're talking about once the play is up, right? Or are you talking about in the
through the whole thing?
Through the whole thing.
I'm not going to let you off the hook.
I'm gonna take a couple of swings. So during the rehearsal process, I'm actually am with them. I do feel like I am with them inside and also outside, and so I am going through this process. And then the question is, they're going through some sort of story, and how do I enlighten it for today's audience? How do I enlighten it, or how do I make it in a way that is believable in today's world, where, you know, we have incredible weapons of destruction, incredible, like the culture and the world has AI. You know, everything is so fast, everything is so new, and I'm trying to also feel that, feel the time of today, and so how do I translate what is happening with the actors on an emotional level to today's language of people understanding and actually trusting theater, where a lot of times just costume doesn't make me believe that that's Richard III. Like, I don't care. What does make me believe with these new weapons that we have in today's world? What does make me relate to the story and say, it's about me, as Moises says, because people need to realize that I can be a Nazi, I can be in that picture. Otherwise, it's just as exactly what you said. It's a separation from myself, and I have the moral superiority versus anyone else. And as soon as that happens, that separation, there's no connection. It's just a moral that doesn't reach anyone. It's a moral that, you know, we must blah 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 blah. We mustn't do anything. Nobody's going to force anyone to remember or pay attention. There's no must. People don't care, right? And that's fine and it's normal, unless you sense yourself and you see yourself in this, and you can walk out and see the world slightly differently. So I don't know. Maybe in that long answer, maybe I answered your question. I don't know.
I've often said that very few people wake up in the morning thinking, oh, what play can I go see tonight? It is usually a combination of people telling them what it was like to see the play they saw, word of mouth, or a sense that they have read or heard something. And I guess now with the video elements of the internet and all that, the possibility of saying, that looks interesting, maybe I should try it. But it is an amazing thing when you think, I mean, look at the people who are here on a Saturday afternoon, giving up an hour and a half of their time to come hear us talk about Holocaust-related theater and why it's important. Without audiences wanting that, without the human mind being curious, we don't have the combination we need of both the show and the event and the audience. So thank you all for coming as well. Okay, one last question, Moises. You and Amanda write the play. Now you direct the play. How, for you, does that process, what is that process for you of moving from author to director? Or is it something you're used to and it's just part of who you are?
Well, a Tectonic Theater project, because we create the work from scratch. Amanda and I would go into the rehearsal room with the photographs and with some of the interviews, and I would say to the actors, you know, tell me what you see in this photograph. So the process of creation was the process of writing and directing simultaneously. There was no really separation. Yes, they got 3 weeks before we opened, I had to kind of step in as a director. But by that point, a lot of the decisions, the aesthetic decisions were made. The way that we work is not starting from a play, but starting from an idea and working with the actors to find out what the theatrical event is. So it was really interesting too, because by that point, Amanda and I were very, very familiar with the photos. But to bring actors in and to develop with them the text and the material by allowing them to have the experiences of the photos, it's a little bit what Igor is saying. It like they became the stand-in for the audience that we're going to see the photos for the first time. So by the time he got a time to actually step into the directing job, I had already been directing since the beginning. So.
And I just want to add one thing to that, also to Igor's point and Moises's, there's something very unusual about making a documentary theater piece. And yes, this is a plug for all documentary theater. When you see something out there, go see it. It's an unusual process. We are interviewing people. We are taking those interviews, and we are using those interviews to create a tapestry of narrative. It will have a powerful dramatic arc, but it is built from texts of interview transcripts and research and experts and, and images, right? The ephemera of history. Part of the way we tell history is from what it leaves behind. From documents, exactly. So there's something very much speaking to how do audiences believe what they're seeing in that story? In the case of documentary theater, you know that it actually happened, and you're hearing it told in the words of those who experienced it. So there's no distance between the subjects on stage and the actual truth of the event itself.
And I dare say one of the most underused phrase, or the least valued phrase that in the English language often is the phrase theater artists. And these are theater artists. So thank you. Now, with the help of my assistant, Moises Kaufman, pointing out the time, we want to have a few questions of any kind. And don't be afraid either if you want to come in on some of the ideas that were thrown out here about the world we're living in today and the fear we have to have about it as well. This is so hard to pick people. I'm blinded, so I'll go there. You need to... The question is, Bruce, did you guys experience any anti-Semitism in your efforts to bring Harmony to Broadway? And we're going to try to get as many questions in as we can, so please be brief if you can.
I think the simple answer is probably yes. I don't think it was blatant, but I think it was sometimes subtextual. We had comments like, well, this isn't the kind of show that I want to have dinner afterwards. It was stuff like that. I also think there's a book out right now called Jews Don't Count, written by David Bedale. I recommend it to you if you haven't read it. It's like an extended essay. I think Jews aren't considered by many to be a minority, that anti-Semitism isn't considered racism by many people. And in that sense, I do feel like we experienced anti-Semitism along the way. Didn't stop us, but it did get in our way.
You want to swing over there for a question, please?
I want to thank you. This was a wonderful event. especially the one about the photos, you think of the horror of something as mundane as that. And I had seen the opening of a movie called The Zone of Interest. I could not leave the theater. The horrific experience that I had with these people on the screen. I'm looking very forward to seeing your production. But I sit here and I am shattered that you received these photos and you're holding something as mundane as that, and the horror of it is really unbelievable. I'm an Italian Catholic, and my father was in the Second World War. My father he had seen Rommel in Africa because he was there. He said, "You do not understand the inhumanity of the Nazis unless you're up close." And I really thank you. I look forward to seeing your production. I'm just absolutely shocked by that box of photos. Shocked.
Go ahead.
I want to thank everyone, and I really appreciate your telling us when the closing dates of the plays are, because my question has to do with the ephemerality of theater. And I remember plays that I've seen, Trial of Oscar Wilde, and the fact that someone else saw it with me and we can talk about it and remember it. And then I'm just wondering, just in terms of the difficulty of filming a play in order to make it less ephemeral and the problems of that. So the whole notion of film and Holocaust and the ephemerality of theater and how you get by that. There's something very special about theater, but if you haven't seen the play, it's very, very difficult for you to share it with other people. That was my experience with Harmony. I saw it a day before there was an announcement that it was closing. I'd love to see it again. I want to tell other people to see it, but it's closing because it's a marketability thing and investors. So thank you.
So there is, right in this library, an institute called Theater on Film and Tape. You're not allowed, they don't stream the work, but you can go with a library card and see the vast amount of productions that have been recorded. I think I heard that they were...
Last night. Lincoln Center filmed our show last night.
So Harmony will live that way too. There is a whole other conversation we can have about the economics of theater and the ephemerality of that. I mean, that something has to cost $15 million to be produced on Broadway, and that not-for-profits are given a short window within a season to do something is subject for another whole very, very important conversation about how we can change the culture of the way work that has meaning is being able to be produced and being made available. Where am I?
I have the microphone.
Oh, someone has
Hello, I have a mic. As a child, I was fascinated by the Holocaust and I studied it. And it took a long time, as you well know, for this to be a centerpiece of theater, and I've seen both prayer and harmony. But the whole issue of the Holocaust now is drowning in all sorts of controversy. And I'm just curious because so many other peoples are claiming that, what do you see as the future of this the presentation on stage or film of this particular Holocaust?
I'm sorry, what Holocaust?
Our Holocaust. What do you see
Well,
as
I
the
really
future
don't want to
of
start that conversation
our
with 2 minutes left.
experience?
Can we have another question? Yeah.
I've seen our class twice, first in London, the original production, and then in Philly. And what I'm curious about, is it autobiographical? Is it based on a book? What are the origins, specific origins of our class?
Yeah, it's based on the research done by Jan Gross in his book called Neighbors, and also Anna Bicond in her book about Jedwabne, and 8 out of 10 characters are real people.
Do you have somebody there, please?
I actually have 2 questions for Sarah Reed. So first, the tragic pogrom, which is the centerpiece of the play, is a well-documented event. But the fact that some of the people that set the barn on fire were not just neighbors, but the classmates, is that what the Slobodanik used as a creative license, or that actually happened? My second question is that, considering the law that passed in Poland that prohibits from stating that Poles are actually to blame for, is Tadeusz Slobodanik in prison, or is he still?
Whether the author, Tadeusz Slobodzanek, is in prison for kind of excavating the truth and bringing it out to the general public with this play. And the first question was whether it's based on true events. Is that right?
It is based on true events, but people who set the barn on fire
were they classmates? Yeah.
Not
So,
just neighbors.
they were absolutely classmates. Yeah, so you could take a look at Jan Gross's book called Neighbors. It's not long, it's very thin, but it has a very specific description of what had happened. They cut off the head of a classmate and played soccer with it. So it's and it's documented. In terms of Tadeusz Slobodzanek, the political situation in Poland, I'm not very familiar with it, but at one point they the Polish government and the president actually came to Jedwabne to apologize for Catholics and what they did in this pogrom, and then there was a huge backlash after that in the Polish community, so then it was taken back. So it's all over the place. But the play was produced in Poland after it was produced in England. He's not in prison. The play received the highest prize, playwriting prize in Poland, called the Nike Prize. And he's actually here in the States right now visiting our production.
All right. What time is it? Pardon me? So we have 3 minutes. 3 minutes? I don't know how to do it. There's so many hands. There's so many hands up. One more question.
She said.
Yeah, we said we'd come back to you. I apologize to everyone who has questions.
I noticed the range of ages in this room, and that's kind of encouraging. I have 3 young sons, and when I took them to see the Tom Stoppard play and other plays, you know, they're generally the youngest in the room, the oldest being 17, the youngest being 13. And I was just hoping to get, you know, your opinions on how we bring that generation into the theater and into this discussion over time through your organizations and maybe what's going on and what to be involved in.
So that's a question I think that is indicative of the problems in general on Broadway as well. There's an older audience and not enough of a younger audience. I can only speak for the work we're doing at the foundation, where we're trying to enable and work with younger audience members to be able to see material based on the subject. And we are also trying to collaborate with organizations and educational institutions that are already engaged in teaching young people and showing them how theater can be used this way and introducing them to the material that we're talking about. I do know that a greater effort has to follow some of the work that they do at the Manhattan Theater Club, and I believe they do at Tectonic, and they probably do at Arlequin, which is to find ways to bring younger audiences to the work during the run through subsidies. So anybody in this audience who wishes to support any of these theaters or the National Jewish Theater Foundation is more than welcome to dedicate. I want to thank you all. I can tell the room is full of questions, and I frankly did not leave enough time. I regret that. But at the same time, I hope you'll go off thinking about this and recognize not only who and what is being done by the field of theater, but the kind of ideas it's trying to raise in you to be a much more proactive and socially just human being. Thank you.